Hello. So in this video, we're going to talk about the advertising analysis, which is a particular type of rhetorical analysis or evaluation paper. The advertising analysis, though, has a particular difference from a general rhetorical analysis that I think makes it a unique assignment and something that's sort of worth talking about in and of itself. So hopefully this video will give you a sense, if you're writing an advertising analysis, of some of the things you need to be paying attention to. But if you're teaching an advertising analysis, some of the things you want to be thinking about as you are approaching this and helping your students kind of understand what an ad analysis does. So what's the main thing that, in my opinion, differentiates an advertising analysis from a different rhetorical analysis or evaluation paper? It's that the purpose is pretty well established, right? So one of the things you normally have to do with a rhetorical analysis, I'm just going to say a rhetorical analysis, but the same thing applies for an evaluation essay. One of the things you typically have to do with a rhetorical analysis paper is to determine what the purpose is. What is it that the rhetor is attempting to achieve? What are they trying to persuade the intended audience of? With an advertising analysis, you don't really have to do that. We know what the purpose is. The purpose of an ad is to sell you some shit. The purpose is to get you to buy whatever the product or service is. If it's a cologne commercial, if it's a truck commercial, if it's a fast food commercial, if it's a computer commercial, it does not matter. The purpose is to get you to buy something. And so in that sense, one of the major elements of analysis is already out of the way. And so the focus needs to be elsewhere. The questions that are central to an advertising analysis then become what audience is supposed to buy this? And are these techniques the right ones for that audience? Are these techniques well suited for this audience? So, the first thing you want to be thinking about with an advertising analysis is audience. And that's true with any rhetorical analysis paper, but with advertising analysis, I think there's an additional importance to it because different audiences will be persuaded to buy things based on different rhetorical techniques. So the type of audience that's going to buy Chanel number 5 is different than the type of audience that's going to buy a new Jeep, for instance. And so you have to figure out who is being addressed here. What audience do they expect will buy this particular product? And there's a number of ways you can do that. One is who buys this type of product. People who are buying Christian Dior perfume, you can probably make an educated guess about what type of person is consuming that product, what type of demographic is consuming that product. If it's a Frosted Flakes commercial, you can make an educated guess about what demographic is consuming Frosted Flakes or Cinnamon Toast Crunch or something like this. And so this is one of the things that's really important, is you have to figure out who they are advertising to. And one of the interesting things about some ads is that the group that they are advertising to may not be the group who's buying. That's particularly important with advertisements for children's products. Children are unlike, let's say, like 5 to 12-year-olds. Are unlikely to have the disposable income to buy a Bratz doll or a Nerf gun or sugary cereal, whatever it is. They don't have money. They don't have disposable income to buy things, but their parents do. That doesn't mean the advertising is targeted at parents. It's still targeted at children with the intention that children will say, hey, mother, father, legal guardian, I want you to buy X product for me. So again, the first question becomes, who is this targeted towards? And then the second question becomes, given that group's characteristics, is this ad effective for them? Because ultimately that's the thing, right? Advertisers, advertising departments, advertising companies get paid massive amounts of money to figure out, how do I sell to a specific demographic? What are the things that will convince them to want to buy? That is their job as advertisers. So if I'm trying to sell a product to athletes, for instance, let's say Under Armour, if I'm trying to sell a product to athletes, how am I targeting them? What are the techniques that are going to be effective? And here is where you're drawing really on your rhetoric knowledge, ethos, pathos, and logos, rhetorical methods of development, things like this. What do I need to do to build credibility with that audience? Well, one thing that I very well might do is incorporate major celebrity athletes, football players, basketball players, soccer players, if it's like U.S. women's national team, something like that. So people who are recognizable. Runners, if it's Olympics era, swimmers, even if it's Olympics era. Pro athletes that audience is likely to recognize, get them to endorse the product. What does this do? This builds credibility, but it also, so that's an ethos technique, building on star power, but it also links to the audience's emotions and values. I, as an athlete, want to be like X player, and so I want to buy Under Armour if they use Under Armour. That desire to see oneself in the place of the professional athlete, this is a very effective technique here. Often you're also going to be looking at, so that's the standard sort of rhetorical analysis and evaluation stuff, right? Ethos, pathos, logos. How are they building credibility? What sorts of evidence and logical arguments are they making? How are they connecting to the audience's values and emotions? But with advertising analysis, you also want to be thinking about visual rhetoric. And in this case, both visual and oral or audio rhetoric. What kinds of music is being played in the background? Because the music is really, really important for TV, movies, and advertising. Commercials, at least. Obviously, if you're looking at a billboard or an ad in a magazine or something like this, you're not getting music. But I think most people today, when they do advertising analysis, they do commercials on TV. Music is really, really important. Again, the music in a Christian Dior perfume commercial is going to be different than the music in an Under Armour commercial. It's going to be different than the music in a Budweiser commercial. It's going to be different than the music in a State Farm commercial. But all of these types of music, what these are designed to do is to evoke particular emotional responses. They tell us what we're supposed to be feeling, whether that's sophistication with a perfume commercial, whether that's relaxed with a like a I know what I'm trying to say. I can't think of the word. Relaxed with like a tropical drink, a tropical juice type product. Whether that's excited and energized with something like a sports product, something like this, whatever it is. Music helps tell us what we're supposed to be feeling, and it's able to do that really, really well. You also want to be thinking about the visuals. What are we seeing on the screen? Do we have bright colors? Do we have dark colors? Do we have high contrast? Do we have consistency? Um, what are we seeing? Are we seeing very busy screens? Are we seeing very sort of minimalistic screens? And all of these things are really, really important in terms of figuring out how this advertiser believed that they could convince the audience to buy their product. So this is one of the things. If you are teaching an advertising analysis project, in addition to teaching the elements of traditional rhetoric, ethos, pathos, and logos, rhetorical methods of development, etc., you also need to be talking about visual rhetoric and helping your students figure out, what does color do to persuade us? What does sound do to persuade us? What does movement do? The balance on the screen, all of these kinds of things. Why are advertisers making particular choices? And all of these things need to be sort of drawn together. If you're writing an ad analysis, all of these things need to be drawn together to say, this is what works for this particular audience, and here's why. Or this is what doesn't work for this particular audience, and here's why. So this is the focus here. Again, you get to sort of bypass the question of what's the purpose of this text and go straight into who is this text intended for and how successful is it, using both traditional rhetoric and visual rhetoric.